And we'll dot between, I mean, obviously it doesn't matter what gallery view you're on. I will pop between you being the main speaker on it and me being the main speaker on it. And then Reese will play around with that. And anytime you're thinking, oh, I want to stop this, just stop. Because like I say, he will chop it. So it doesn't matter if we're doing things that don't necessarily drive the interview on. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so good morning. It's lovely to see you, Charlene. Thank you so much for responding to my call out. I just wanted to talk to as many people out there in the community at this very strange time. First of all, do you want to introduce yourself and just say a bit about what you do in the community?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for asking me. I'm Charlene Tait and I'm the Deputy CEO of Scottish Autism. Scottish Autism is the largest provider of services for autistic people in Scotland. We offer a whole range of services that are generally commissioned by our local authorities, sometimes our health authorities here in Scotland. So we have mainly, most of our services are for autistic adults, and we have things like, we have day opportunities, we have 24/7 residential services, we have outreach services, we have a service that is has been designed around autistic people who are getting older. We offer a number of sort of vocational experiences as well. We have 2 cafes, we have a garden centre, which is just beautiful. It's and you can see the foothills and Clackmannanshire, and you know, people are out in fresh air, and it's a really tranquil, lovely service. But it operates as a garden service, is open to the public. And then we have a whole range of other services that we've tried to develop through our sort of charitable efforts, if you like, through trust funding and community fundraising and corporate fundraising, where we deliver support online to families. We've got an online support programme called Right Click, which is a sort of series of autistic people or people who've worked in the field for a long time, speaking about, you know, different topics. And we've got programmes on there for parents of young, possibly newly diagnosed individuals, teenagers who are in transition, programme for parents who are still supporting adults at home. And we've got a specific programme for women and girls, which was a real co-production piece, which was mainly, in fact, I think most of the people who speak on that are autistic women, or have worked with autistic women for a long time, but most of them themselves are autistic. And we've got an advice line, and in this current situation, we've got some funding from the Scottish Government to expand that. So we're open longer, we're open over the weekends, and we've been doing a sort of advice line plus series where we get people in to talk, do different seminars and whatnot. But a really important part of what we've done over the last few years is develop what we call the Centre for Practice Innovation, and that sort of really goes to the philosophy of the organisation, because I've worked in autism for quite a while, and I've seen the changes in terms of, you know, just how social care models have changed, how society has changed or not changed in some cases. And what I suppose our evolution has been is to be much more about enabling individuals to be their authentic selves, to live an authentic life, and to not be so focused on the challenging behaviour, which is often a byproduct of something that those around the individual is doing in terms of stressing, or the environment, or communication, or not understanding that person's thinking or learning style. So I suppose we've gone from let's have a look at this person and see what we need to do to them, to let's look at a more enabling approach and a more humane approach, actually, in terms of understanding that person as an individual, and what motivates them, what concerns them, what stresses them, what interests them, and building from that way around. So not problematising the person, but actually recognising the kind of interactive kind of nature of the world that we all live in, the transactional nature of stress, the issues that we all have when we kind of spin off and bounce around this world with each other. So the idea of the Centre for Practice Innovation was a kind of dawning realisation that no one's coming to help us. No, there's no great big kind of knight on a white charger, that actually the best thing we can do is learn from each other and learn from the people we support. And so we have a whole philosophy and developing programme of practice-based research, which has also got a participatory ethos where we work along with the people we support to try and understand from their perspective the things that they're finding challenging, or the things that they find are helpful, or the things that we need to understand better. So we've got quite a lot of activity going on around Scottish autism. We also have a school, a residential school, which is an absolute joy and delight. It's not like any other school I've ever been in. There's just so much evidence, if you like, of that as a community where people are very much included, are very much part of that community, and are thriving in an environment that understands them.
Wow, that's a lot going on. It's really interesting that you talk about this shift, because I definitely have seen it and was driving for it, because obviously I was a parent in the community, but also a practitioner, that it was all about trying to change the child for such a long time. So if you couldn't change the child, then you were a failure as a parent, or the child was the failure. And then I was always saying that when I witnessed the children that I work with in the right environment, they were fully who they were meant to be at that stage in their life. And so it was really trying to battle with other people saying, like, the family, change the family dynamic to suit the child, and it will benefit everybody. And it was, I remember in the early years really fighting for that voice and thinking, maybe I've got this wrong. Maybe there is something out there that I'm missing, the magic pill, you know, the knight on the white charger that's going to come with the intervention. And it's not frustrating because it's brilliant, but you kind of think, oh, everyone's waking up to that now. You kind of think, and like you think, we've been thinking that for quite a long time.
Yeah.
There's this new news that it's all person-centered. It's brilliant because, of course, everybody's now buying into that. We still have all those interventions around that think it's about the child and the challenging behavior, and my skin crawls when I hear that. But actually, rather than fighting that battle, we just got to keep spreading the word and looking at the evidence, as you say, creating the right environments and watching these young people reach amazing milestones that were beyond expectation, but also find this unique voice and energy in the world that might not be presented anything that's genius or dynamic, but it's just who they are. And then you see them thriving, and that's such a wonderful ethos, isn't it? And I could see your face light up when you talked about the school. I thought, I want to spend a day there, because I sense
come and visit us.
I'd love to. So when did that change, and how did that change? Was it something that you saw from the outside in, or did you do it and then think, oh, it's working? Did you take it?
Well, I think I've worked for, in fact, my anniversary was Friday, 30 years of working, and it's a professional connection I have. I don't have anyone in my family who's autistic, and I think that when you enter something like social care as a profession, so that was 1990. So, you know, in Scotland we were just at the start of closing the large institutions and thinking that we were creating these lovely community environments. But the first service I worked in was a big house with 20 people in it, which is still a kind of institution. And I think that when you're early in your career, you don't think you know anything, and you sort of quiet that intuitive voice in your head that says, this can't be right, this can't be right. But all these people around you are telling you, well, this is right, this is the way to do it. And I think it's a source of great pride to me that our organisation bears no resemblance whatsoever to what it did 30 years ago. It's grown and it's evolved. So I think that when you start working, or maybe what I'm really thinking is that there needs to be much more of a place for intuition in this kind of work. because it's so much, in fact, it's all about relationships. It's all about the connections and the relationships you make with people. And those will be positive and thriving and successful with some people and less so with others. And that's something we're not good at admitting, that actually, do you know, we just don't connect. That person and I just don't connect, and I'm not good for that person. And as a practitioner, that's really hard to say, and it's really difficult sometimes for providers to listen to their staff when they say this isn't working out. So I think for me, the change, I am fortunate that my own development led to a leadership role and therefore had much more capacity to influence. And for me, it's about the connections that you make. It's about finding your tribe. It's finding people who think like you, who reassure you that you're not going mad, and create a culture in your organisation where you can say, why are we doing that? That's maybe not the best way. And then being able to sort of thread that through. So I think that the sort of social care context that we operate in terms of the policy and the services that are commissioned, don't always make it easy for you to put your hand up and say, I don't think that's right, or really, is that what we're doing? Because people feel challenged sometimes by individuals that they don't understand, and so they problematise the person rather than question their own level of understanding. So for me, as an individual professional, it's been a process of reflecting and learning and finding people who challenge my thinking and being open to that. I think organisationally, it's about having a leadership team who have a shared philosophy and a shared vision and a desire to have a kind of rights-based approach and a values-based approach, and to, you know, walk the walk and talk the talk. I think, does that answer you?
Absolutely. Now, we're obviously in quite a strange situation from a work context. Obviously,
yeah.
I imagine working in this is quite challenging, but also the people that you support, the school, the groups. What do you think the biggest challenges, or what feedback are you getting from the community?
Yeah.
We're now 2 months in, about this situation and what they need.
So I think there's different experiences. I think there are some people who are very challenged by it, but I want to speak first of all about the people who are actually thriving in this situation, who are feeling the social load being lifted, who don't have the anxiety of going to schools or other contexts where they don't feel understood. You know, that the social distancing and the less social contact is actually kind of working for them. And I think that there's a lot to be learned from that. We have to dig into that, I think, and try and understand that, and how we perhaps retain some of those kind of learnings once we hopefully, fingers crossed, get back to some sense of normality. But in terms of the other side of that, I am so aware that the people we directly support just experienced this seismic shift almost overnight, and my heart goes out to them to think that, you know, everything just was pulled from underneath them. However, what I have seen is our staff just rise to the challenge and support people in just ways, with imagination, with care, with love, in a way that it just makes you actually really emotional to think about it. I think that the other big thing for me in this is that certainly in Scotland, and I think it's probably the same in the rest of the UK, our service delivery had become very crisis-led, that people were needing to be in really quite a critical breakdown situation before any services were put in. And what's happened since the start of this is, you know, the Scottish Government in particular has been putting funding into what we would have been arguing for so long, those kind of light touch, human contact, advice services, community connectedness, reducing isolation. So there's been this kind of almost, you know, bizarre twist where this crisis has tipped the whole focus of services to those proactive, preventative things. Whereas before we had this, these are, tea and sympathy, or, community projects or whatever. They weren't valued because they weren't understood. Tea and sympathy is a very complicated thing to deliver when someone's upset. So I think what we've seen is, I hope, a sort of recognition that those proactive, preventative services are actually what sustain people. They what help people endure through these difficult times. We will always need those crisis services, but let's put our efforts into stopping people getting there. Let's put our efforts into having a good life for people where they feel less stressed, where they feel less vulnerable. And so I think that there are some lessons learned at that level. But on a human level, for sure, there's people who are finding it tough out here. Our advice line, we have people who are really struggling with the isolation, who are really struggling with the lack of service around them and support, who are really struggling to make that shift and adaptation, and lots and lots of worries about, do you know what, I'm just getting this settled down and then it's all going to change again.
Yeah.
And about the transition back. So lots of stuff, but I have to say, within our own organisation, Scottish Autism, tremendously proud of staff who are working in really challenging situations, and the people we support have largely risen to that challenge as well, which is just absolutely wonderful. And I think testimony to that trusting relationship that's been built up between the people we support and the staff who support them.
Yeah. So what are your concerns going forward, and what are your hopes going forward? Give me 1 minute. My dog is on the sofa snoring. I don't know if you can hear her.
I can't hear her.
And I don't want this to go out and then Reese say, there seems to be some strange rumbling, or she's woken up. But literally, she was snoring. I thought, I can't interrupt your love.
I couldn't hear it.
Ignore that. That's the professionalism in me. I'm going to ask that question again.
It's okay.
So, what would you see as the kind of your hopes going forward, with or without this situation, and your concerns going forward?
My concerns, I'll start with them. My concerns are that we don't learn anything from this. My concerns are that we revert to type. I think that the third sector is a very creative, very innovative sector, and I think that, my concerns are that the kind of recognition of that just gets buried again in the kind of, I don't know, the ruins of all of this. But I think that my concerns are that for some individuals, this trauma is going to have a long and lasting impact. And I think we have to recognise it's a trauma, and we have to ensure that people have got support there to help them come out the other end of that and rebuild, and that families, and the importance of family and that family unit, however that looks, families have become the bedrock of this, because there's not anybody else able to come in a lot of cases. I know that in some cases people do. So that kind of the strength of the power and the benefit of supporting that family unit, however it's constituted. My hope is that we recognise that, we shouldn't be waiting till people get into crisis to put support in. And my hope is that we can actually, for those individuals who are doing better in this situation, I'm reading lots of things about children who are no longer, they're not at school, they've not got the social pressure of school. That's not a message that we shouldn't have school and we shouldn't send children to school, but it's a strong indicator that our schools need to look different and do better for autistic learners. So my hope is that there is some kind of societal level of learning, but for sure some policy and governmental level of learning around how our systems do and don't operate successfully for autistic people and their families.
Well, I suppose we've got some hard evidence as to, is it the autism that brings the anxiety, or is it the context? And I think we've really got hard evidence for that.
Yeah.
That I'm speaking to lots of families where they say, well, the first few days was chaotic, but now we've got a rhythm, we've got a routine, not having to get up in the morning, getting out of the house, the parents aren't so stressed. If you can stay in the day, in the moment, and be with the child, they're finding a new relationship, which is so gratifying. And like you said, it's not to excuse the fact or to ignore the fact that there's some financial challenges, some health challenges, and some going forward, some big problems when this finishes, but we're not there yet. So you have to only look at what we're doing now. If you had any advice, and let's say you've got an adult listening to this interview or a parent of a young person, you know, what could they do to get them through this in the best sort of way possible? What do you think? Big question, I'm sorry, but maybe you've got
that's a Monday morning big question.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, I think that I think there's a number of things, and one is to hold on to the things you know, and the things you know you can do and you have control over, and your understanding. If you're a family, your understanding of that child or adult is critical here. You know, hold on to the things you know. I think in a crisis, it's very easy to sort of focus on all the things that are not happening, but you will know what motivates that person. You will know what triggers that person. You will know how to soothe and calm that person. You'll know what reduces the stress in that person. So get a big notepad and write down all the things you know that work and the things that are helpful, and just focus on them. Build as much of that into the day as you can. And I think it's also about recognising that this isn't going to be forever. So as you mentioned earlier, what do I need to do to get through today? And take the pressure off yourself. You're not a teacher, you're not a psychologist, you're not, well, you might be, but in this situation, the best thing you can be is a mum, a dad, a brother, a sister, and just have that kind of human connection with the person in your family. I think the other thing to do as well is be selective about what you're engaging with. I think that social media can be a really good thing, but you can also sometimes feel that you're in some lifelong competition with everybody round about you. And if you're not coping and everyone seems to be chirping out all these positive things, that's not you, that's not your experience, and that's fine. So I think it's really, because we've got a lot of time, it's really difficult to resist the allure of all these social channels, but actually they can be quite soul destroying. As well as a source of support, they can be quite demoralising. So be selective about what you're engaging with. And I think there are opportunities. There are lots of organisations who are putting training, support groups, information out there, all for lovely and for free. So, be selective about it, but there's lots of opportunities there. But I think that the main thing is to think about your priorities, and all of our priorities just now are to be safe and to be well and to be out the other side of this in the best condition that we can be. So prioritise your mental health and well-being, your physical health and well-being, and the other stuff will all be there further down the line. Just try not to put too much undue pressure on yourself or the person around you and your family and autistic individuals. And I learned this phrase autistic joy from Dean Beadle, an autistic man, and just get out there and engage in all those things that give you joy, if you can do it safely. But I think remember the things that bring you joy and fill your day with as much of that as you possibly can.
That is a wonderful message. This has been fantastic. So inspiring what you're doing, and so heartening and reassuring.
Thank
also,
you.
I feel Scottish Autism is in good hands, really good hands.
There's lots of hands, thankfully. I've got lots of brilliant colleagues, so thank you, Tess. Thank